Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be going over Tarkov settings and the ones I use and I personally like the best in this new wipe. So, with the recent patch that happened, everybody's graphics settings were reset and they had to change them again. And I've been testing with a few graphics settings and I've noticed there is some differences, and I'll explain here in a second. So the first thing we're going to go over is visuals before we move into graphics. So visuals apart from graphics don't matter here. For visuals I use these Postfx. This is my Postfx. Brightness on 0, saturation 35, clarity 0, colorfulness 75, luma sharpen 20, adaptive sharpen 0. Montreal, in my opinion, is the best color grading. You can mess with this though, depending on what you prefer. 35 intensity, you can increase or decrease depending on your monitor. Colorblind mode, none. And we will also go over more settings in Nvidia control panel, but we'll do that after this. So take in this picture here, see how it looks now. And now that we turn off Postfx, see how it looks without it. It looks washed out and gray and dull. And this is why Postfx is really important. As you can see, it looks a lot better now. Now, we're going to move on to game settings here, and as you can see, I have 42 frames on the top right, 140, 139, and I get around the exact same in RAID. I just have a FPS limit for 144, since my monitor can only handle that much. But the settings I use are going to be these ones. So, for graphics settings, I use 1440p. You don't have to use this depending on what your monitor resolution is. Most people will prefer 1080. I just prefer using 1440 due to my monitor being 1440. So for LOD quality, you want to set this to 2.5. You can set it lower. This depends on usually how far you aim and how far you want to spot targets. So for example, if there's a person standing over there and I have a lower LOD quality, I probably won't be able to see him unless I scope in with a variable scope. Now, the higher you turn this up, the more performance it's going to take away from your game. So it's going to really depend on your system how much you can handle. But I would say the median is from 2 to 3, and that in between is what I use. Now, for overall visibility, I keep this at 1500 for airdrops and sniping, but you can go from 1000 to 1500. I wouldn't go over 1500. This is probably the best. Now, some people might not use DLSS. I personally do. So for texture quality, I would go on high. This doesn't impact performance no matter what you put this on realistically. Anything below high will give you around the same performance. Shadow quality low. This gives you a tactical advantage. Anti-aliasing, I prefer TAA usually, but I use DLSS, so this doesn't matter for me. Resampling, 1x off. AMD FSR, I don't use these, so I couldn't tell you. But for the rest of these, HBO, SSR, and anisotropic filtering, Nvidia reflex, low latency off. And I'll explain why Nvidia reflex is off in a second. And this is only this wipe that it pertains to. So for these three, just keep these off if you want maximum performance. I personally keep them off because I don't see a major difference when I keep it on in terms of visuals. And then for sharpness, if you're using DLSS like me, I would keep this at around 0.7 to 1. I keep it at 0.8. I think it looks the best for me, but 0.7 to 1 is probably the best in my opinion. It just depends on your preference. And then this down here, this doesn't really matter too much, but you can adjust it how you want. And then for the bottom settings here, I recommend checking all of these off. The only reason I have high quality color on is just for recording and stuff. I think it looks much better, but you don't have to turn this on. I would recommend turning all this off for maximum performance. Now, let's get into why I use DLSS. So, DLSS, with the newer DLSSs, let me actually turn on Postfx. So, it is on. With the newest DLSSs, DLSS 2.0, DLSS 3.0, they've really updated it from DLSS 1.0. And it's gotten a lot better. So with DLSS off, for example, you can look at the visuals here. DLSS is off. You see 70, 80 frames. Not huge difference. It's just more more detail, as you can see, a bit sharper. And then when I put this on, you can see it's a bit smoothed out, but at least my FPS is a lot higher. Now, this might matter in more visual games, maybe like Hogwarts Legacy, where you want maximum visual fidelity. But in this game, it doesn't matter too much because, you know, at least me, I don't personally look at every little brick and imagine, you know, the detail on it. I don't really care too much, but in my opinion, DLSS quality is going to be the best for that visual and performance gain. You can go to balance, but I wouldn't go any lower than balance because it just ends up making the game look very blurry and just weird. I think Tarkov can definitely update the DLSS feature a little bit more. I think it's a little out of date. I don't think they have it set very well, in my opinion. I've seen it better in other games, but nevertheless, it still gives you very good performance, and I personally use it. Now, I'll explain why Nvidia Reflex low latency is off. So I recently noticed this patch that for some reason, many people with like similar systems than like I have. So I have a RTX 3080, Nvidia RTX 3080, and I have a Ryzen 5 5800X 3D. And for some reason, a lot of people with similar specs, I think it might be the processor, the 3D V-cache, when they have reflex on, for example, during a raid, as you can see right now, I have 140 frames, and then randomly in raid, it would drop to just like 60 or 30 FPS and stay there, and you would have to restart your game in order for it to fix. And for some reason, if you turn off Nvidia Reflex, it fixes it, and you will never have that issue again. Now, I'm not sure what the cause of this is. I'm sure Tarkov and BSG will fix this issue, but for now, if you use a 5800X 3D or any 3D CPU, I would recommend turning this off. Otherwise, I would turn it on plus boost, because it gives you lower latency, and it might make or break a fight. Now, for game settings themselves, this is what I use for my game settings, FOV. So, English, the lab, I just like lab. I would recommend always showing these. These are pretty much like your HUD. This is really comfortable, in my opinion, to use because you can quickly put stuff in your hotspars, and you can see your health and stuff. And the color scheme is important here. As you can see, it's green. I like it as green, and if I get shot, it's gonna go down to red or orange. That way I know how hurt I am. Now, some people will change this to monochrome. I personally don't like it. I think polychrome is the best looking, but that's just my opinion. Highlight available, everything. I would keep this on. And then the most important thing here, realistically, is to use only physical cores. This is going to increase performance by quite a bit. And for FOV, I personally use the maximum FOV. A lot of people prefer around 60 to 75, around there. But I personally like it at the max. Now, head bobbing, I don't know why anybody would keep this higher than 0.2, but I'll show you here for an example. This is me running without head bobbing on, pretty much, at 0.2. And this is me running with head bobbing at the max. I gotta save that. Hold on. As you can see, it's a bit worse. It's not as noticeable right now, but I believe the heavier you are, the more you notice it. But it's just a really annoying feature, and I would really not recommend using it at all. Now, for this stuff down here, I would recommend malfunction notifications turn on, and double-click item use also. And the one other thing I will show is controls. So there is some controls that you might want to change. So these are what I use, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a second. So just look through these, see if you want to copy my settings. Okay, so as you can see, I have, so this is one of the things that's cool for weapon malfunction. So here I have it set to, so inspect current weapon. So for example, if I shoot this gun a bunch, right, and then I get a malfunction, for example, if I get a malfunction, I would have to do, for example, I think the default's Alt-T, I would have to inspect it, and then I have to repair it, and you don't have to do that with this keybind. So what you just do is you bind inspect current weapon to whatever bind you want, and then you set it to press. So when you press the button, it will inspect the weapon, but then you also set check chamber / fix malfunction to the same button, but put it on release. So if my gun jams right now, all I do is press L, it'll inspect it, and then when I release it, it's going to automatically fix the malfunction. So that way you don't have to press 2 buttons, and you just press 1 button and it does everything for you. Now, one other settings you could change, and I recommend changing, is emergency weapon reload. If you don't have this set to a good button that you don't use, then you're going to constantly drop your mags on accident. For newer people, it's going to be set to R, I believe, as well. And if you double press R, it'll just automatically drop your mags on the ground, which is very uncomfortable sometimes. And I just recommend turning it completely off and just set it to a button that you never use, just in case you do need it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. These are my settings, my mouse sensitivity, graphics. If you guys want to copy this, feel free to use it, see how you like it. And now we'll go over to the Nvidia control panel. I'll see you there. Alright, now that we're in the Nvidia control panel, we can go over the settings you should set here. So for higher end systems, if you have a similar spec system like me, I recommend putting these settings as I have here and 3D settings. So just copy what I have here if you have similar specs. Now, for the most important thing is going to be this, the adjust color resolution. So for the best visuals, in my opinion, and for you to see during night and things like that, I recommend setting these settings. Now, digital vibrance, you can set to 50. You don't have to set it to 60. This is just personal preference. All this does is increase colors. And the more important thing here is going to be the gamma. So the gamma is going to pretty much show you things in the nighttime more. It's gonna make darker images lighter. It's gonna be easier for you to see. So for example, as you can see, I turn this down to 1, and you can see, for example, this background picture is much darker. And the more I turn it down, the darker it is. But the more I turn it up, the lighter it is. And this is pretty much how it's gonna be with and this is pretty much how it's going to be with Tarkov. So in the dark, it's going to be quite light, and you'll be able to see further in the dark and actually spot things. So yeah, this is the settings I used. This is the colors I use. There's more settings here in Nvidia you can change, but I'm not really gonna go over that because this is all you realistically need. And yeah, just these are my settings. If you like them, go ahead and use them. I think they're the best for this patch. And if there's anything you have issues with, feel free to leave a comment. I will reply if I can. Thank you, and consider subscribing.